My name's Adela and I make minis. Back in April, I challenged myself to make
100 vases in 100 days.
Today started off with a minor tragedy. I'd been to my shared studio in the morning only to discover that one of my minis had been dropped and now it was sat in pieces on my shelf. Here's a quick before and after. After a very sad walk home, I decided to try and make a new version of this mini as a little reminder of this tiny vase. I started off with the body, pinching out 2 cone shapes before joining them together to create that nice angular shape. I gave the whole thing a once over with my metal rib to help give the shape some crisp lines and sharp corners. Once I was happy, I moved on to the neck. The old vase had a little cone for a neck, but I wanted to make it a bit simpler this time and added a little sausage, which I blended out to make a rounded lip. I attached some nice big handles and then moved on to the decoration. The original vase had some bold lines right down the middle, but I thought this one would look better with some smaller lines all the way around. I was a little bit impatient here and didn't want to let the slip dry as I went, so there are a few fingerprints here and there. But despite that, I'm really pleased with this one. I think I managed to capture the vibe of the old vase with some nice new twists. What do you think? This mini was supposed to be quick, easy and fun, and it turned out to be anything but. The idea was to make a spontaneous shape and use that as a springboard for the design. I came out with a nice wide and rounded shape for the body, which I decided to elevate with a tiny little foot. It gives the heavy shape of the body a nice visual lift. I wanted to see if my new way of creating a lip would work on a longer neck, so I opted to give it a try on this one. And I think this might have been the point where it all started to go downhill. Despite being really careful about where I placed my neck, it ended up being totally off centre and somehow managed to just exaggerate the wonk of the body. I carved away some small dimples to try and counteract this, but I'm not sure how successful that ended up being. At least there was some interesting texture now. I went for some super low handles to balance out the overall shape and decided to call it there. This one ended up totally wonky donkey and it might have looked better the other way around, maybe? I'm not really sure, but I guess it's kind of fun. I needed to have an easy day today as I was feeling a bit unwell, so I decided to make something simple. To make my life a little bit easier, I slab built the base shape using the pattern I drafted last week. Turns out, when your body doesn't feel like doing ceramics, it really doesn't feel like doing ceramics. So something as simple as rolling out a nice thin slab became a big ask, and I came out with some chunky slabs and some super wonky walls. I decided to push through though and added a neck, which I promptly ripped off as it was just too big. At this point, I decided to give up on my sketch and go rogue. I opted for a shorter neck and only 1 set of handles as 2 just didn't look right. To finish it off, I went for some super deep carving to take advantage of my thick walls. And after all that struggle, it actually came out looking pretty good. During my COVID-induced quest for a quick and easy vase, I remembered seeing these flat slab-built vases, which I thought would be perfect for the job. It turns out, it's not as easy as it looks. It started off well. I drew out my shape, cut out my slabs, and then got to joining them together. I think I might have joined them a bit too early when the clay was still too wet, as the whole thing kept collapsing and it was really hard to give the piece some shape whilst joining all the sides together. So, for my second attempt, I decided to take the handles off to make the joining easier and to set up each slab on my loop tool for a little bit so that it would firm up with a bit of a curve to it. This worked much better, even though I still would have liked to have had some sort of former or padding in between the 2 slabs, just to make sure the middle stayed open. When working on delicate slab pieces like this one, it's also important not to try and shape it too early. You need to wait for the clay to become leather hard. For this one, I used a metal rib to neaten up the joins and smooth out each slab. Once the main body was done, I added the handles back in, and this is the final result. I'm a bit worried this one might crack open in the kiln, or that the opening will shrink so much that you won't be able to use it, but it's given me a new idea for tomorrow. Okay, so today I wanted to build on the work I did yesterday, but improve on it. The slabs were fun, but the flatness was not, so today I'll be adding some more dimension to the shape in the form of some side slabs. I went for a fairly classical shape today. I used my drawing as a template and cut out the front and back from the clay, and then slowly added the side slabs to each face until I had the finished shape. I also added some broad, flat handles to match the theme, and some white slip to give it some more texture. It's simple and clean, and it's given me yet another idea for tomorrow. Today, I wanted to play with the idea of two vases that fit together to make one whole. By slab building the same way I did yesterday, I'll hopefully be able to create matching contours more easily. At least that's the idea. I started off by drawing out the overall shape that I wanted the two vases to make, and then I split it down the middle to make two more abstract shapes. I used these two halves as the templates for each vase. These pieces were fairly easy to knock together, but one thing I didn't foresee is the slabs twisting slightly. You've got to be careful to keep the front and back slabs parallel when adding the sides to avoid this. Once I put the two vases together, I started slowly refining each shape, first using my metal rib to shave off any extra clay, and then moving on to my sponge for the final smoothing. It looked like the two pieces slotted into each other really nicely when I laid them side by side, but when I put them down on the table, I realised that the middle split just didn't match up. At first, I thought I hadn't been accurate enough when cutting out my slabs or when I was joining them, but then it dawned on me that the smaller vase was on a bit of a wonk. I'd instinctively lent it to one side to make it more stable, so I added some extra clay to the base to help it straighten out and stay upright. And here they are! Two cool little abstract shapes and one big classical vase. And that was week 12. Thank you so much for watching. Please do leave a like if you enjoyed it, as it really helps me out. Let me know in the comments if you have a favourite or if there's something you'd like to see me make. And most importantly, make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss out on next week's video. I've only got 16 minis left to make.